generate a good intention, motivation for being here. The purpose of us coming here together is to learn more about the Dharma, to be reminded of some of the practices so we can apply those practices. So that through those practices that we can take care of ourselves better and others. And may it be cause and condition to achieve fully enlightenment. And thereby liberating all sentient beings from all their suffering and cause of suffering to fully enlightenment. Okay, so then we can do the refuge and bodhichitta prayer. Yeah. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving the perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan soge chonan sanju chodan sage soge personam yola tenje sangye. Okay. So we will on Wednesday we discuss about the fear in general and how to deal with the fear. And I did mention a little bit about the death. And today we will talk more about fear in relation to the death. Again, why we have fear about death, of course, there could be many causes and conditions. One of the causes I mentioned last time was the attachment to our life. That is one. That is one of the factors that lead us to be fearful of our death. And there could be many different factors, different reasons for different peoples, and for some, we are fearful that we might have a painful, miserable pain at the time of death, because maybe either sometime we have heard about it, we have seen it, people who struggles and have a lot of pain at the time of death, and that can be another reason why we're fearful, because we don't want to be in that kind of state. We don't, and the fear that we might be when we face the death, we might have that kind of experience. That could be one of the reasons for some people about fear of death. For some, if you are a really strong believer of any particular spiritual path, then again, that could be another fear as well. If you believe in internal permanent hell or what do you call heaven. So of course there's fear that you don't want to go to hell forever. For some people that could be the factor that drive them fearful. And as a Buddhist, still, even though we don't have concept of a permanent hell and permanent God realms, and but we still have concept of lower rebirth, even is impermanent, temporary, and due to our karma, we could be born in one of those state, lower realms. So we don't want to be born in one of those lower states. And that could be another, for some, as a Buddhist, that might be another fear of death, because you don't want to be born in one of those, and you feel there is possibility of being born there, and that could be another factor that drive us a fear about the death. And for someone who doesn't believe in anything after the life, it might be fearful, because that is very permanently end of you. We are very attached to ourselves. And now this is the end. After this, there is nothing remains. At least in Buddhist, you can continue, You can continue, and it is not the end. It is just a changing of body, but you don't have to be so fearful, because you are not finished permanently, you continue. But someone who believes that there's nothing after this, then it could be very fearful, because that is it, for some people, and but also for some people, because this is the very end, they feel maybe they don't need to be so, they might not be so fearful, but also sometimes it can be interesting, we feel, regardless of whether you believe in any particular spiritual path or non-believer, sometimes we feel, that is natural, everyone's go through. There's no need to be fearful, and I have no fear. We might feel that at the moment, but actually when really facing the death, it could be a very different experience, which a lot of people have. A lot of people who thought they have no fear of death, but something happened in their life and it just feel like so near death and so much fear there. And one of the examples, very small example, we experience in our life many times, I was in Nepal a long time ago in one of the places, and there was a place where people do a jumping, bungee jumping. And we were looking at them, and there were a lot of people who came to bungee jumping, prepared, they did everything. And then once they came, they couldn't do it. Many of them, they couldn't do it. They have to back up. Some of them, trying to back up, and the instructor trying to give them more confidence and trying to push them. And sometimes they just push them, and so what that show is, they wanted to jump because they thought they have no fear. They thought they can do it. But once you are there to the edge, before you jump, the fear overtake them, and they couldn't overcome that. And that is a good example of where we think we have no fear and we would be able to do it, but when you are really there, then the fear really arises. And same could be the same with the death. Even though we might feel no fear of death, unless you have prepared. Someone who has prepared would have not experienced, but someone who have not prepared and they think they could, they can overcome the fear, that could be a misleading and deceiving as well. But of course, someone who has prepared, and that will be different. Whether it's even like bungee jumping, someone who have trained themselves before to do similar things others. Then they come, they have experience, they have prepared, they have trained, so they have less fear, But person who is not prepared, not trained, then, so that is one thing. That is why preparing is so important. Preparing, So when it does comes, at least we have prepared, So then we are not in a unprepared territory, So preparing is very important, and also I have noticed some people dying and also hurt, even though some people who think, there's nothing after the death as end, but at the time of death, things started to come, because you never know what is behind. It's unknown. When you are not there, you think it's easy to say there's nothing after that. But actually, when you come to that moment, you started to think what might be after that. And that unknown, what might be after that, is it really end of this life, or is it there's something after that? If there is something after that, what is that? That can be, again, another factors that bring the fear, And, for a lot of people, even though at the moment they feel there's nothing after the death, but it's unknown. It's something that, unknown for them. Just because you can't see, it doesn't mean it's not there, because we haven't been able to explore the whole planet, whole galaxy in our life. It doesn't mean there is no life beyond our world. There could be life in other planets, in other stars. We are just exploring only some of them. In the same way, what is after our life is something that, of course, different spiritual paths have different concepts and belief, but even from the science point of view, it's something unknown. They can't say if there's something after that, or they can't say there is nothing, whether there is something or there is nothing. it is something they are still trying to understand, learning. So because of that, at the time of death, that can bother someone, and make fearful as well, even though they felt quite, before they actually experience the death, and before that very moment, they feel quite comfortable and quite confident that there's nothing after that. But that might not be the case. And, people. So those are certain different factors that can that can lead to fear about death for different peoples. So it is important to prepare and train ourselves so that we have less fear at the time of death. So that we have less fear at the time of death. If possible, no fear at all. If we train our mind now, if we prepare ourselves, it's absolutely possible for someone not to have any fear at the time of death. Not only no fear, but actually joyfulness. That sounds a little bit kind of, does that sounds a little bit kind of exaggerating? But that is what it says in the teachings. The best practitioner, the highest practitioner, when the death comes, they will be able to face it joyfully, because they have a confidence, total confidence with their practice and their futures. And therefore, for them, this body is getting worn out, getting old, so it is just like changing a coat. Wouldn't we be so happy when you have an old, worn out, and then you get a new one, And that is how they feel it. They have confidence with their practice, confidence with their futures. And therefore, this body is getting old, not being able to function properly. And then the idea of getting a new healthy body and continue your practice, continue your path, and their confidence where they are, where because of your practice, you are confident that you will have a higher rebirth and in certain way. And so it gives them not a fear, but joy, looking forward for it. His Holiness Dalai Lama even mentioned a couple of times, he says he's looking forward to it. Of course, he's trying to live as long as possible so that he can benefit, because so many people, even he says, just mentioned a couple of days ago, because so many people, especially Tibetan people, look at him, and that is, for a lot of them, he's the hope that gives them the hope. So therefore, he wanted to live more, but also he has mentioned also he's looking forward for that. So so he had mentioned a couple of times in the past about that, and when he was talking about the clear light meditations at the time of death, and about when he was mentioning about that, and he said he's practicing those meditation death, the 8 dissolutions at the time of death, and then clear light meditations. And he said he does that kind of meditations 4 or 5 times a day, in relation to different sadhanas. And he said at the time of death, he's really looking forward for that, that he has is like he said he's mentioned he has been training that now, and now he's really kind of looking forward for that when it actually happens. So anyway, what I'm saying that not only you don't have fear, that you can be actually joyful as well, as it is mentioned in the. And then for medium practitioners, not a great practitioner, for a medium practitioner, it says, because again, you have prepared, you have trained, at least you have no hesitations, no fear, no hesitation to face the death. Even though there is no joyfulness, looking forward, but at least you have no hesitations to face the reality of the death when it comes. And for the least practitioner, at least you should, it says, when the death comes, at least you should be able to die without much regret. Without much regret. For a lot of people, when they die, that is one of the things that bother them. A lot of guilt, a lot of regret from their life. And that haunts them, that haunts them, wishing they could have done this, that, wishing I could have done more, that way, this way, because it's your last kind of things in your life and you can't change, you can't do. And so something that is bothering, and that can be a lot of pain, suffering, So for a practitioner, least moment, at least you have no regret or less regret. And you have no regret or less regret because you are prepared. Because you are prepared. So that is, I think, so we aspire to be in the first, if possible, to be able to face it joyfully. If not, we aspire, at least without any fear and hesitations. On the minimal level, we should train and prepare, at least we have no regret or less regret. And to do that, preparations and comes, is important. I just wanted to read one how it can be when we prepare ourselves and when we about the death or before the death, for the death, when we prepare ourselves and when we accept the death is natural, it doesn't have to be so painful. It's natural and it is okay. It's absolutely okay. When you are able to accept that, then it can be much less painful. It can be relief. Instead of trying to fight against it. Trying to fight against it is something you cannot fight. But instead, accepting and being okay with it can make it much less painful. So in relation to one of the students of Lama Zopa Rinpoche in Australia, who started and founded one of the centers, in Brisbane. She got a cancer and she died with cancer. But before she died, a couple of months before that, she wrote a letter to Lama Zopa Rinpoche of her experience. And it is quite moving and encouraging, and so I thought maybe I would read that, what she wrote. She said, although I'm dying, this is the happiest time of my life. That's how she felt. For a long time, life seemed so hard, too difficult. But when really recognizing death, it turned into the greatest happiness. I wouldn't want anyone to miss out on their own death. The greatest happiness that comes with having recognized impermanence and death. This is quite surprising and unexpected and extremely joyful. It's the greatest happiness of my whole life, the greatest adventures, and the greatest party. That is what she felt, and she shared, and she wrote to her teacher, Guru, Lama Rinpoche, So this is a good example of how that can be joyful as well. I think it is important to understand and recognize that, because a lot of time we associate death with pain. A lot of time, just the idea of the death. When we think of death, the idea is always kind of associated with the pain and suffering. But death doesn't have to be that way all the time. It can be very peaceful. And I have seen many teachers who pass away, and some of them physically challenging with the cancer, but emotionally very peaceful, very peaceful, and to see that despite some of the physical discomfort, but your mind being in a peace is possible. It has been shown by many practitioners and teachers, and again, who knows? As I mentioned, when you are actually really facing the death itself, what kind of experience, what kind of emotions arises, is hard to know. Even though we try to prepare and hope for the best, but having seen and experienced many of those practitioner teachers who have despite their physical discomfort, to be able to accept, to be able to go through that process and peacefully, give me a lot of hope and less fearful, in a sense that it doesn't always has to be a pain. Definitely there could be physical discomfort, depending on your health situations. But despite, even if you have a physical discomfort, still the possibility of your mind being able to be peaceful with that. I think for me to experience, to see that, give me a lot of hope and kind of less fearful in that way. So I think in that way, then it is important for us to, when we think of death, you know, we don't have to associate with the pain and suffering all the time, you know. To remind ourselves, it can be peaceful. If not joyful, at least it can be peaceful. And to be able to go through that. Of course, we need to prepare, you know. Everyone wants to go through peacefully. I think there's no one who doesn't want to die peacefully in the world. Everyone wish they could die peacefully. But whether you are able to do that or not, it depends on how much prepared you are, how much training and prepare you have done to do that. You know, the more preparation, the more training we are, the more we are able to deal with that more peacefully. The less prepared, then more challenging, more difficult it becomes. So if we are fearful of the dead, then we really have to prepare and practice, you know. And if we really prepare and practice, then you can overcome the fear. And in relation to that, I wanted to kind of read quotations from one of the poems of Milarepa, you know. He said, "Frightened by the dead, I ran to the mountains." And it was because at the very beginning of his life, you know, he killed a lot of animals and people. And then the family who knew that he did that, they was, you know, coming to get him and beat him, and he ran away from that. Of course, he regretted what of that. And so anyway, frightened by the dead, I ran into the mountains, meditating on the uncertainty of the dead. You know, so once he ran away in the mountains, and he started to practice, you know, on the Dharma, and especially thinking about uncertainty of the death. That means when the uncertainty, when the death could come, you know, it could come any moment, any time, anywhere. You know, that is so uncertain. So because of that, by meditating on uncertainty of the death, it inspired him to practice all the time, you know, because he wanted to practice before the death comes. He wanted to prepare before the death comes. So I ran in the mountain, meditating on the uncertainty of death. I realized the deathless state, the innate nature. Now I have lost all the fear of death. Started with fear and lost all the fear. And this is if we are fearful about death, we should follow Milarepa's path and all other practitioner path in a way, of course, not meaning that we run away in the mountains, you know, not anyone can do that and have that. But what it means is that that fear should drive you to practice more. As we were talking about yesterday, about the healthy fear and unhealthy, and that is the healthy fear. You know, because of that fear of death, so then you want to prepare yourself. And the way to prepare yourself is the practice. And the more we practice, the more we are prepared. The more we are prepared, the less fear we have in facing it. So in terms of preparing for the death, in terms of the practice, I think there are so many practices, but as in many of the lojong, and especially in the 7 point of mind training, there is a one point where it is saying how to integrate all the practice in one lifetime and at the time of death. And so that is the preparing, so I think I might just touch on a little bit on the integrating all the practice in a lifetime. Because if you have integrated your practice while we're alive, then you are more prepared at the time of death. And so that is in that then integrating all the practice in the form of 5 power or 5 forces, and so the power of intention or motivations, the power of familiarity, the power of overcoming the negativities. I think Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I think, translate the power of blaming the ego, and then the power of prayer. What is the other powers? I don't know if I have here one of the other powers. Maybe it might come later. I don't remember now. Or the power of the white seed or the virtues. Okay, so then in relation to that, the power of the intentions or the motivations is, every day, every morning, maybe the first thing, is trying to generate a bodhichitta motivation, intentions for the life and for the day. So we try to start the day with the bodhichitta motivation and intentions for the life. For example, there is nothing more meaningful than to be able to help and benefit sentient beings, and not only to help to for their temporary well-being, but to be able to help them for ultimate well-beings. That means to be able to help them to overcome not only temporary sufferings, the pains, but the very root of all these suffering and pains, all the karma, all the delusions, all the obscurations, and then to be able to help them to lead them to not only temporary happiness, but ultimate happiness of enlightenment. There's nothing more meaningful than to be able to be helpful to that. And to be able to do that, first I need to be able to help them with our own direct experience, with our own direct experience. Then first, I need to purify of my own all obscurations, all the delusion, all the obscurations, and I need to develop all the positive qualities, virtuous qualities, and achieve full enlightenment. And to achieve that full enlightenment, then I must engage into the practice of bodhisattvas, such as six perfection and so forth. And therefore, I'm going to try as much as possible to follow those bodhisattva practice as much as possible throughout my lifetime until I achieve enlightenment, especially this life, and particularly this month, this week, and specifically, I will try my best for this 24 hours. So trying to generate that kind of strong bodhichitta intention and motivation for the day, for the life and for the day. So that is and so if we keep on doing that every day, first thing in the morning, we try to do that. And slowly, we try to apply that motivation before we do any activities, before you do every practice. When you are trying to meditate, whether it's evening, daytime, or anytime, when you are trying to meditate, or when you are trying to recite some mantras, or when you are trying to do any form of practice, trying to regenerate that intention, motivations, and thereby reconnecting with that bodhichitta intention, motivation again. And slowly, we try to generate that motivation while you are eating, before you eat, before you go to job, before you do your exercise. So whatever you do, throughout the day, before you drive, the purpose of my life is to be benefit to all sentient beings. And in order to be benefit to all sentient beings, I need to practice in the bodhisattva path. And in order to practice the bodhisattva path, I need to be healthy, have a long life. For that healthy, long life, I need all the necessary needs, such as food, housings, and or shelters and clothing. And for that, I need to walk. Therefore, I'm going to walk. For that, I need to eat. Therefore, I'm going to eat. For that, I need to drink. Therefore, I'm going to drink. For that, I need to exercise so I can be healthy, so I can practice, so I can be benefit. So therefore, I'm going to do the exercise, whatever form of exercise. So therefore, you relate whatever you are doing with that towards that both sort of practice. And thereby you transform whatever we do in 24 hours into something virtuous. So then when we revisit that bodhichitta motivations, not just one time, many times, then, it becomes more and more natural, easier. And then eventually, hopefully, that it becomes effortless, and it comes day and night without putting any effort. And that is where it went. But to start with, we start with one, and then we started to increase it slowly, and trying to bring that motivations in every aspect of our life, with every activities that we engage into. Mm. Mm. So, of course, when we talk about bodhichitta, there is a conventional bodhichitta and ultimate bodhichitta, and so we try to practice both of them as much as possible. So that is the power of intentional motivations. Then the power of familiarities. So then during after that, the motivations, what the first things that you try to do in the morning, and then during the day, you try to meditate, contemplate on to bodhichitta as much as possible. Of course, if we can find a time to meditate on cushions, we'll try to do that. Specific effort on our cushions. But if you can't find a time on your cushions, you can still meditate while you are walking. You can still meditate on two bodhichitta while you are walking. Meditation doesn't mean closing your eyes and sitting cross-legged. No. In this, while you are walking, you try to contemplate and meditate on the kindness of sentient beings, how we all are same. And through that, cultivating a strong wish to repair the kindness, to be benefit and help. And in order to making a strong, and through that trying to develop love and compassion, wanting to see, wishing and wanting to see them happiness, wishing and wanting to see them free from suffering, cause of suffering, and then making a strong commitments or resolution that I myself will try to reduce their suffering, free them from suffering and cause of suffering, and lead them to the happiness. And to do that, then I need to achieve that full enlightenment. And in order to achieve that full enlightenment, then I need to practice the Bodhisattva's path. So while you are walking, you can still contemplate and think that way. And while you are doing that, whatever exercise you are doing, either you are jogging, running, probably if you're running, it might be a little bit more, I don't know, it might be a little more challenging. But I guess if you get used to it, you can do that, Walking is more slower pace, so maybe it might be more easier, and thereby then you don't have to feel guilt. Oh, I'm taking 1 hour or half hour off from my practice by walking. I wish I could practice instead of walking. Do you get it? Because you are doing walking, you are getting physical exercise, and you are getting a mental exercise through contemplation. And not only mental exercise, really good mental exercise on bodhichitta. You can also think on emptiness itself, the ultimate bodhichitta, emptiness, while you are walking. You can think, who is me, who is walking? you know, who is that person who is walking. So you can do that. You can think, what is walking? What is walking? You know, what is coming and going? You know, you can do that exercise. You know, when we think of walking, so I'm going that way, or coming, you know, when we think of coming and going or walking, it seems like there is, in our mind, it appears there is a absolute kind of act of walking or coming or going. But if you really analyze this, there's no. Your act, whether it's going or coming, it depends on which side. From that side is coming. From that side is going. Only in relation to that. Otherwise, you can't say it is walking, or you can't say it is coming or going either. Is neither coming or going. Is neither coming or going, but is going from this, relatively from this side is going. And if you look from that side, relatively from that side is coming. But is neither coming and going. But normally in our mind, or going or coming, it seems as though it is, that act is kind of absolutely act of coming or going. But if we really analyze, there's no coming and going by itself. So therefore that act itself is neither coming and going, and is only either coming or going depending on from which side, which relative you are looking. And doing that kind of exercise, again, to understand. And not only that, you know, every act, coming, going, eating, everything is same that way, you know. And also doing, you know, exercise, you know, if you are walking, you know, will you be walking if there is no path? Can you say there is what you are walking if there is no path? You know. And what is path? You know. Is it the path if no one has gone there? You know. Can you say it is a road or path if no one has been there before? Is this path or road if one sentient being has gone? If one cat has gone, can that be path even though it is no human being has gone? Or even not one of the animals has gone, if you are going, can that be path, road? What is road? What is path? So, you know, the very road, the very path you are trying to walk, you know, what is walking, what is coming, what is going, what is the path? Without the path, can there be walking? Without each of those steps, can there be coming, going, walking? Is each of those steps coming, going? With each of those steps walking or not? So while you are doing that kind of exercise, you know, you are starting to reflect, contemplate, meditate on the ultimate nature of what you are doing. So that itself become practice meditations. Mm. And with that, then if we keep on doing that, you know, while you are gardening, while you are cooking, while you are eating, while you are washing, whatever you do that, then all of them become practice. While you are doing that, you are still meditating. While you are washing, you are meditating. While you are cooking, you are meditating. While you are cleaning, you are meditating. So then we don't have to worry. There's no time to meditate. And there's no excuse. A lot of time we say, oh, we don't have time for meditations. We have a lot of excuse, But if you can bring that, there's no excuse. You can have excuse, you couldn't find time to sit on cushions quietly, cross-legged, because some days you might be extremely busy. Some days you might be extremely busy. Some days you might be very tired because of certain things. But there's no excuse not to be able to bring that meditations while you are doing the other things. And through that, then we familiarize with the two bodhichitta all the time. We familiarize, we practice that. And through that practicing again and again, then we familiarize with the practice. And as we become more and more familiar with that, then it doesn't require so much effort. It goes kind of almost like automatic into that, and we want to reach in that point. At the moment, we have to put a lot of effort. We have to remind ourselves to meditate. We have to remind ourselves, we have to push ourselves and remind ourselves, put effort to meditate. Because, we are not so familiar with that in terms of practice. It requires effort. But as we engage more and more, then, it requires less and less reminder to you to do that. Once you started walking, you started to think that, you started to do that meditations, because you are so used to that. Once you started doing something else, you started just immediately while you are doing, whether it's gardening or whether it's cleaning, whatever, once you started to think that way, you started to think about the bodhichitta, whether, the ultimate or conventional bodhichitta. And then, your practice become more stronger and stronger. So, familiarizing with the two bodhichitta through practice. And then the power of the virtues of the white sage is, in order to have a better meditations success in our two bodhichitta. The two bodhichitta is our main kind of practice. So that is the very heart of our practice, very heart of our practice, the very essence of our practice, the main, the center of our practice, But in order to the center of practice, the heart of our practice to become successful without much obstacles, then, we need to purify the negative karma, the obstacles. We need to accumulate merit to create the conducive conditions. Because the actual meditation is like a seed. When you plant a seed to grow any plant, And for the plant to grow successfully to its full potential, then you need to clear the obstacles, whether it's the weed, rocks, whatever. And that is like purifications. And then you need to gather the other conducive conditions like the water, fertilizer, the heat, the light, so forth. That is accumulating the merit, the virtues. So therefore, in order to have a more success and less obstacle in our main practice of two bodhichitta, then sometimes we need to engage in the practice of to support that practice, to support the two bodhichitta mind, the meditation practice. Then we need to engage in other form of practice to support that purification accumulation method. And so therefore, when we engage into those different form of practice, of different form of accumulating merit, different form of purifications, in order to support the main practice of true bodhichitta, that is what we call the power of the virtues, the power of the white seed. So you engage in the other virtues, other form of virtues, in order to support the true main, support the main practice of true bodhichitta. So that is one thing important that we have to remember, relate. Every time, any form of practice we do, whether you are doing a water bowl, whether you are doing a prostration, whether you are doing a offering of light, flowers, incense, or whether you are making prostrations, paying homage, or whether you are making food offerings, whatever, other form of mindfulness, watching your breath, whatever meditations, reciting what mantras, if you are reciting mantras, whatever, always really, I'm doing this practice. I'm doing this practice in order to support the true bodhichitta mind, the practice of true bodhichitta mind. Always relating all this practice are to support the true bodhichitta mind, which is the key to our enlightenment, which is the key to happiness of others and oneself. And which is the key to reduce and overcome the very root of our problem and suffering, the selfish attitude and self-grasping, ignorance. And so that is important to relate whatever virtues we engage into, whatever form of different virtues that we engage into, to relate that as a practice to support the main practice, the true bodhichitta mind. So not forgetting the main practice is true bodhichitta mind all the time. So we never get, so that we don't get distracted from the main practice. Because sometimes we can kind of lose the directions, Always knowing why we are doing those practices is to support that main practice. Always relating with that. So that is the power of the virtues of the white seed. And then the power of overcoming the power of overcoming the main obstacles to develop the bodhichitta mind. So as I mentioned, Lama Zopa, Rinpoche, translated as blaming the ego. So again, throughout the day, whenever anything bother us, something bother us, whether it's physical or emotional, mental, maybe we are having some health issue, some pain or some health issues. Maybe we're having some problem at our workplace with certain individuals, or having some problem with families, or maybe someone is being not so nice to you, whatever things happening, or sometimes different emotions arises, anger is, frustration arising, fear is arising, impatience is arising, strong desire arising, ignorance, jealousy, whatever different disturbing negative emotions, feeling that might arise. When all these things, when we encounter and face those things, external, internal, those things, whatever, recognizing, oh, I'm experiencing. Being aware and recognizing, oh, I'm experiencing health issues. I'm experiencing this, challenge at the workplace, or with my colleagues, or my friend, with my families, or whatever that is, or this particular emotions or feelings is bothering me. So being aware and recognizing that, and then saying, why am I being bothered by all this, whatever is bothering me? Why am I being bothered by that? Oh, I'm being bothered. I'm experiencing, and it's bothering me externally, internally, whatever is happening, because of selfish attitude and self-centeredness. That is why. That is why I'm upset. That is why I'm frustrated. That is why I'm impatient. That is why I have so strong desire. That is why I'm having an issue with this at the workplace, with the family, or at the families, with anyone. That is why I'm having health issues. So whatever challenges, difficulties, problem that arises in our life, external, internal, recognizing that, being aware of that, and then immediately, instead of blaming someone else or blaming yourself, we blame to the selfish attitude of self-centeredness, the selfish, selfish attitude and self-grasping ignorance. Because of that. So each time we do that, we are able to do that, the more and more then we begin to understand how this selfish attitude and self-grasping ignorance is the very root of all our problem, and the needs to deal with them, the needs to reduce and need to overcome them, become more and more strong, more and more profound, more and more, really. At the moment, even though we say selfish attitude and self-grasping is the very root of all our suffering, and that it is still in the word, sometimes we are just playing with the word. It doesn't come from our heart. We don't really feel that way. We still feel it is that guy, this or that, The main cause of my problem is him, her, or, that situation, these situations, or myself, whatever. But we really doesn't feel, we don't really feel, the main cause is that selfish attitude and self-grasping. And so as we train that, each time that something bothers us, immediately we try to kind of point towards that selfish attitude, self-grasping, ignore it. Each time we point it, it's like, news, how our mind affected. Like you hear the same news one time, two times from different source here and there. Slowly, even you didn't believe at the very beginning, you started to believe. Isn't it? A lot of time, that is how it happens. That is how a lot of these conspiracy theories also get into people's mind. First time, it doesn't get in their mind. They hear one time, they hear second time, and they hear the same thing from this side. They hear from another person, and they hear from another person, and then they say, it must be real. It must be real because, I saw here, I saw here, I saw here. And so repetitions, whether it's truth or whether it's lie, sometimes make our mind kind of get into that, believe in that. That is the power that has repetitions, and same thing, that's how our mind also, when we try to remind ourselves of that all the time, the very root, the very cause of all these our problems, our selfish attitudes, then more and more we started to be, more and more started to really feel it from depth of our heart. Not just saying the words or not just intellectually, and when you really feel it, then we started to really work harder to reduce and overcome them. So that is power. And then the fifth one is the power of the prayer and dedications. So whatever virtues we engage into, whatever meditation practice we engage into, we try to dedicate all of them, all the virtues, all the positive energy, karma that we might have created to be able to actualize the true bodhichitta mind. For those who have not actualized, for those who have already actualized, not to diminish, but increase more and more. So dedicating and praying to oneself and all sentient beings to be able to actualize those two bodhichitta mind in their mind stream. And those who have already actualized, not to diminish, but increase more and more. And so then, and then dedicating to be able to meet the Mahayana teachings that teach on how to develop true bodhichitta mind all the time in all the futures, to be able to meet the qualified teachers who can teach us and who can guide and on how to develop and increase and improve true bodhichitta mind. So dedicating in that way. So basically, all the practice is connected to the main practice to bodhichitta mind. The main practice is meditating on true bodhichitta mind. The dedication prayer is to be able to develop those actualized true bodhichitta mind. Engage in other virtues is to support this true bodhichitta mind, the practice of true bodhichitta mind. The intention, motivation that we develop in the morning is to develop the true bodhichitta mind. And then whatever bad things happen, blaming the selfish attitude and self-grasping, which are the main obstacle of the true bodhichitta mind. And so in that way, dealing with the bodhichitta. So that is how we try to integrate all our practice. If we integrate that in our everyday, then day by day, it becomes week by week. Week become month, month become year, year become decades, and then your life. So then, so if we try to do that practice while we're alive and we train that, then at the time of death, you will not have regret. You will not have a regret, and you will not have a fear, and your future is taken care of. Your future is taken care of. Because this is something practice that we have engaged in our life. So at the time of death, even you are physically weak, mentally weak, you'll be able to do the practice because you are so familiar with that. It doesn't require much effort. If we don't practice now, at the time of death, if someone asks you to practice and even you want to practice, it will be difficult because physically, mentally, we are not so strong, weak, and you are trying, but something you have done so well and so familiarity, you don't have to put much effort. It just goes. You just try to, either you do yourself or someone just remind you, and then you are able to go into the practice very easily without much effort. And so practicing bodhichitta at the time of death becomes so easy. And when you are able to practice the two bodhichitta at the time of death, there will be only joy. There will be only joy, blissfulness, and confidence of future. And with that confidence, you wouldn't have the fear. And your future is taken care of. So that is preparing for the death, so that we will have a less fear and more joy, less fear, less regret, and as well as better futures. So with that, I think I will conclude here today. And so if there is any questions, any comments, please. Any comments, any questions? Most welcome.
Thank you, Geshela. I have a question about
yes, please.
Relative and ultimate bodhicitta. Is ultimate bodhicitta from the framework or perspective of emptiness, or is it just synonymous with emptiness? Is it the same thing as emptiness?
At the moment, I use very loosely for emptiness, but ultimate bodhicitta, if you want to be very precise, then it is emptiness. I mean, it is the wisdom realizing emptiness directly, okay? Not only realizing emptiness, but realizing it directly. It is the wisdom that realizes emptiness directly that is supported by the conventional bodhicitta. That is the ultimate bodhicitta. It's the wisdom realizing emptiness directly that has been associated or supported by the conventional bodhicitta. Okay, so the wisdom realizing emptiness in arhat, even though they have wisdom realizing emptiness directly, still we don't call it is a ultimate bodhicitta because it is not supported by the conventional bodhicitta in the arhat, because arhat has a wisdom realizing emptiness directly, but that wisdom will not be known as the ultimate bodhicitta because that wisdom is not supported by the conventional bodhicitta. Okay, so it is the wisdom realizing emptiness, but support when we use very more precisely. I was using more kind of loosely for the wisdom realizing emptiness. Yeah. So sometimes sometimes it is good to be precise, but also sometimes it becomes a little bit more complicating sometimes for certain people. So sometimes we use the terms a little bit loosely, but if we use it precisely, then of course that is the how a little bit more precise way. Yeah.
Thank you, Geshela.
It's my pleasure. Yes. Any others? Everyone saying ready to go to bed with the bodhichitta intentions. Everyone's excited to do the meditations. Excited to do the meditations on bodhichitta for going for the sleep.
Thank you so much, Geshela.
Okay, so if no question, then we'll do the dedications. If Elizabeth, if you can have the Shantideva dedications. It might be a little bit down, Shantidevas normally. I think I saw before when you were doing for the refuge before the teachings, I saw that coming. Yeah. Yeah, okay, thank you. May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merit. May no living May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depressions. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those who with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from all their ailments. Whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightening cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And we can also dedicate for oneself and all sentient beings to actualize and fully develop the two bodhichitta mind as soon as possible. And those who have already actualized, not to diminish, but increase more and more. And may all our gurus have long, healthy life and all their wishes be fulfilled. And may we be able to follow their perfect example. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good night. See you tomorrow, some of you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Nice to see you, Benjamin. Thank you.
night.
Antonio, good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, Geshela.
Thank you. Good night.